Welcome to another episode of the Granite List Live, where we discuss all things related to employee benefits and human capital. I'm Lee Dill.
And I'm Sally Pace. And today we are joined by two great gentlemen that are going to talk about how they're solving employer pain points. We've got David Stedman, who's the founder and CEO of BrightDime, and Jameson Fauver, who is the VP of Business Development at Kashable. Guys, can we start out by just talking about vendor fatigue? What is it? How are you helping solve for it?
Sure. I can tell you this. I think it's a real problem out there. We see it all the time. The good news is financial wellness generally is growing tremendously lately. And so it hasn't affected us. But I will say that we've met with employers, and sometimes the best option when it comes to financial wellness is to do nothing, because they have vendors from every sort of benefit possible trying to contact them. And there are a lot of what I'll call is just kind of target vendors that are targeting one specific problem. So if you have that, you're going to have hundreds of vendors that are trying to get the attention of HR. So I say that, Jameson, I'd be interested to see if you have a similar experience. But what I do know is part of the reason that BrightDime and Kashable came together is to address that point. So that's a great question, Sally, and thank you for asking it.
I couldn't agree more. We speak with employers all the time that say, we have hundreds of contracts that we're managing. If anything, we're trying to get rid of vendors, not add vendors. So something like financial wellness, where I don't think anyone is sort of this one-stop shop. I think the winner in the space eventually will be this one-stop shop, and that's probably going to be through mergers and acquisitions. But we're not there yet. So it's partnerships like the one that Kashable and BrightDime have that make it easier for employers to attack all the different financial wellness needs of their employees, whether that's coaching, student loan help purchasing a home or a car, or simply just low-cost loan to handle an emergency.
And we all spell out for the audience, what is the partnership to date between Kashable and BrightDime?
Sure. In any sort of courting situation, it was sort of, we were dancing around each other for a long time saying, hey, this would be awesome if we worked together, because we have the same prospects. Sometimes we even have the same clients. But because financial wellness can't be solved just through coaching, and it can't be solved with just access to low-cost financing, right? And I think that what we realized, a lot of employers have sort of, when they got into financial wellness, I think coaching and education platforms were the first thing that they wanted to do. But then a lot of them thought, the coaching and education platforms, they do such a great job identifying and finding solutions to help people get from point A to point B. But sometimes there's solutions that they don't have in their arsenal. And so what Kashable does, like if a financial coach from BrightDime was talking to a customer and they said, hey, I really need to improve my credit score because I want to get access to buy a car, right? And I want to get low cost financing. And the only way to do that is with a better credit score. There aren't a lot of good ways to build good credit unless you can have access to a loan that reports to the bureaus. And people that are subprime traditionally, even if they paid back their title loan or their payday loan or their 401k loan, those don't report to the credit bureaus, and they have no good way of increasing their credit score. But that's where Kashable would come in, right? We give access to a low-cost loan to everyone, and therefore, if they pay us back, within one loan, they could increase their score by 45 FICO points. And then that employee could go back to their BrightDime coach and team and really figure out sort of how to take that next step and purchase that car successfully with an improved credit score.
I'll jump in and say one thing here. Jameson's exactly right, and thank you for saying that. Well described. One of the things that, and I'm not even sure Jameson knows this, BrightDime has always said, oh, we're independent, we're unbiased. So we're always wary about certain partnerships where we're partnering with somebody to offer a product. We have been approached by numerous financial institutions that wanted to partner with us because we are like a lead gen for those financial institutions. We can provide people that need loans, and we've always said no. In this one case, we said yes. And the reason we said yes to this is because we are always trying to position BrightDime as doing the right thing always, 100% of the time for the employee. In the case with Kashable and lending, and you don't always equate this with lending, but in the case with Kashable and lending, yes, it is always doing the right thing for the employee. And more often than not, I think almost every time, and Jameson can correct me if I'm wrong, what they're trying to do is refinance debt at a lower interest rate. And that is always good for the employee. So for us, it was solving a lot of things. We did not like not being able to offer this to employees when they needed it. A lot of high cost credit cards or payday loans are perfect examples for a company where Cashable can come in and provide that solution, and BrightDime cannot. And so we would always work with these people and try to figure out how to get them out of debt. 80 to 90% of our coaching sessions is regarding debt. And so it solved a big problem for us, is a great partner for us, and it allows BrightDime to keep with this mission of always doing right by the employee.
And I'll just add there that about 50% of the use case for Cashable is employees refinancing expensive debt. Because for most working Americans that are subprime, their open market options for unsecured credit are payday loans and title loans, which are 200, 300% APR, right? And if they can get access to something from us in the high teens, low 20s, and that's a fraction of the cost, it's a tremendous savings. And that's what 50% of the use case is proactively paying down debt and then reactively managing major life events and emergencies just as an alternative to borrowing from your 401k.
Our coaching sessions, one of the things that we're trying to do always is break this paycheck to paycheck cycle. I think this is quoted a lot, and I think it should be quoted over and over again. Is 78% of America's paycheck to paycheck. That is astounding. That should not be the case. And so, what we're trying to do is break that cycle. And there are a lot of ways to do it. But one of the first places you need to start with most people is with debt. And so that's why this, another reason this partnership works. And if we can break that and get people to start saving for retirement, a third of Americans have zero saved for retirement. I don't think that's as astounding as the 78%, but still an important number. So this partnership, as you can tell, I'm excited about it, but it's because it is really moving people and giving us a tool to help people break that cycle.
So, can we talk a little bit more about retirement? The debt issue is such a crisis in America. But once you have that solved, how do you look forward to retirement? And what kind of solutions are you bringing to some of the members you're coaching about how to save for retirement?
The good news and the bad news is that every single situation is different. Every person's situation is different. And that's where BrightDime's coaches come in, and they're all highly qualified and have been dealing with this now for many, many years on every different scenario. So what we do with a person is first we attack or address debt issues, because often if they're not able to retire, there are debt issues almost every time. Once we have something in place with somebody like a Cashable, then we're going to start working on, okay, how do we put away money for retirement? The obvious place is with the 401k. 401k providers love us because we're naturally always increasing participation in 401k. HSAs are another form of saving for retirement that people don't really understand like they do the 401k, but a great tool, and where our coaches also help people invest in that. So we put together a plan for the individual employee, but every plan is going to be different. So I can't just tell you, oh, here's plan XYZ that applies to everybody, because it doesn't. Each plan is different, but we do a personalized plan for each person.
And to add to that from the Cashable side, what do most employees do when they have an emergency and the paycheck can't cover it and savings can't cover it? Because payday and title loans are so expensive, and even credit cards are pretty expensive, they often take a loan from their 401k or a withdrawal. And the 401k loan sounds nice because you're paying yourself back, but there's still lots of pitfalls, right? I mean, people are doing this all the time, constantly having $2, $3, $4,000 outside their 401k. And the biggest issue is that money's not in the account getting the return on investment. And if you look over the last couple of years, that could be a 20% loss every year by keeping your money out of the market. Not to mention that there are fees like application and admin fees associated with the 401k loan. And also, a lot of people end up defaulting on their 401k loan. They leave the employer, they don't pay it back. That triggers a federal tax penalty, other income taxes. So the point is that this 401k loan issue is what a lot of employers are trying to solve for, because it really could prevent an employee from retiring on time. And that's where Cashable steps in as like this intelligent alternative to the 401k loan during emergencies. And we've proven it time and time again that we actually do help to transition people from the 401k loan to Cashable. We reduce 401k loans anywhere from 25 to 35% once we're implemented for over 6 months.
We're piling on each other, but I'm going to add one more thing to that. We had a client that I think they love BrightDime and everything we do, but they basically said, here's what we want you to do. We want you to reduce borrowing off 401k. They had basically a run on their 401ks. They had mandatory participation. Okay, so let's start with that, which was great for many, many years because every one of their employees had a very large balance in their 401k. At some point, somebody heard that you could borrow off that and it spread like wildfire. So they brought us in to help with that. And as Jameson pointed out, BrightDime and Kashable together can help even better with that kind of situation. And it's recently been becoming a bigger and bigger issue because people are so used to debt these days. There are all different ways to have debt.
That's remarkable.
One thing I'll add on the 401k loan, and I just think this is interesting, is that most people borrow from the 401k when the market is going down. So, like, oh, the market crashed. I'm scared. I'm going to pull my money out at the low point, which is like, the worst thing you can do. And so it's beyond like the 20% loss. People end up just taking money out of their 401k at the bottom and putting it back in at the top.
And I didn't want to forget this because I think this is so cool. I talked about earlier how we were really focusing on breaking that paycheck to paycheck cycle and that we were trying to move people from being in major debt to saving. One of the things that Cashable does, and this I think is fantastic, is that their loans are paid back through payroll deduct. And if somebody pays back that loan, they can choose to then continue to have that payroll deduct and put it in emergency savings. And that is really cool because that piece right there is transitioning from debt to savings. And that's what we're all trying to get people to do here. And I think that's really cool.
Well, and David, I want to transition a little bit from the individual employee and talk more broad scale about how this impacts the employer. I know you've got such a deep background in the major Wall Street firms. You know the financial industry like the back of your hand. And I know you built BrightDime based on the core tenet of empathy. But thinking about really the impact that this has for an employer on reducing turnover or retaining employees. Can you talk through how you guys are addressing that from an employer level?
Yeah, happy to. And turnover is a big deal for everybody these days. The unemployment rate remains very low. And when you have a low unemployment rate, the employee has the leverage. And so a lot of employees are jumping from employer to employer. Having said that, their number one stress level is financial stress. So we've got two things going on here. First, we're trying to help the employer retain that employee. And so, how do we do that? Well, we lower the financial stress of that employee. As you guys know, I love data, but financially stressed employees are 2.25 times more likely to leave their company. That's a big thing. And so, that is just data. You put that in front of an employer and you go, hey, whether you like BrightDime or not, or what we do or how we do it, you need financial wellness because here is how financial wellness can help you as an employer. And I don't care whether it's us or somebody else. I do care. But I do think that every employer should have a very strong financial wellness program because it will help lower that stress level and retain employees. The other stat that I will quote here is when you talked about productivity, and companies lose about $1,900 per employee per year due to financial stress. This is not a BrightDime number. This is numbers that are in the market. And it is, again, showing how valuable financial wellness can be to the employer. Now, from my perspective, I just think it's the right thing for employers to do. And I thought that when we started the company. I think it probably 10 times more now that I read these coaching sessions and I read how much help people need in their financial lives. I started this, yes, to help people. I didn't realize how great a need there really was. And I think a lot of companies out there really don't realize it either. There's some companies out there that are checking a box for a certain kind of financial wellness that at least that's progress. But I think that the more companies invest in financial wellness, the better off the company will be, and obviously the employee will be.
But how are y'all going to market? Is it BrightDime and Kashable together? Is Kashable just a tool in your toolbox for BrightDime? What does that look like?
For the most part, right now, it is Kashable making BrightDime available to our clients, right? And so if we're offered at a large manufacturer, right, the employees of that manufacturer, not only do they have access to our low cost financing program and our free credit monitoring and our savings accounts, but if they register on the Kashable platform, they can access all that BrightDime has to offer. So if this employer has 10,000 employees, it's possible that about 20% or 25% of those are registered with Kashable and therefore have access to BrightDime. But what we're seeing is that some employers that know that BrightDime's available to registered Kashable employees have said, hey, you know what? That's great, but like I really want to make a bigger push to make BrightDime available and announced to my entire population. And so with that, we would refer the employer over to BrightDime to have that direct relationship and create sort of the broader, more focused engagement path.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And I'll just add that this relationship is relatively new. So the answer to the question from a broader perspective is yes, which meaning that our clients, I think, will appreciate the opportunity to use Cashflow, vice versa. The way I look at it is that what is important is what the employer wants. If they want us together, we can do that. If they want us independently, we can obviously do that as well.
Yeah, and for the record, we want all of BrightDime's clients to offer Cashable, but we got to respect sort of the agnostic approach that BrightDime has, and I think that as Cashable sort of becomes the only real player in our space, right? We are the largest by far provider of credit to employees in the employee benefits space. It just makes sense.
I'm glad you pointed that out, Jameson, because if an employer is listening to this podcast and they don't know Cashflow, you should, because they are. When we made the decision to move in this direction, we don't want to do it with the best that provides it, and Cashflow is certainly the best that's out there.
Is there anything we didn't get to, or is there anything else that we need to add?
I think when we were talking about like why it's important to have both like coaching and education and then sort of this like safety net that Cashable is, it's sometimes interesting to look at like the healthcare situation where if you think about like wellness in the healthcare space, it's going to the gym, it's eating right, it's exercising, it's going to the doctor, it's doing the preventative care. But still, even if you do all those things, you eat right, you go to the doctor, you could walk outside, slip, and break your arm. And you still need access to emergency care, which is Cashable. So if Cashable is sort of the emergency care, financial coaching and education is really that preventative care. And so I think that as more employers start to realize that access to a financial safety net isn't about getting employees into more debt, it's about understanding the reality that people can still break their arm, or even if they've done everything else right.
All right. Well, guys, we really appreciate one, what you're doing in this space to impact the financial status of Americans that are working so hard across the country every day. You're definitely making a tremendous impact. And if people wanted to learn more about how they can deploy your solutions for their employees, David, take the lead. Where would they go?
Obviously, you can look for BrightDime at www.brightdime, BRIGHT, dime.com. And you can find everything you need to know there. You can also request a demo there. We would love to show you all the things that we can do. Jameson and I touched on a very small piece today, but we want to show you everything. And we would love to talk to you about this particular partnership because there's so much opportunity here. But if you're interested in just the lending side, Jameson, I'll let you talk to our audience about who they can contact there as well.
Same thing, head to Kashable.com. That's Kashable with a K. And you can register there to see a demo, register for our newsletter to get monthly updates. And we'll be happy to connect and speak with you more about the program.
I just want to thank Granite List because they're doing a great job and we appreciate what you do with us, but we also appreciate what you're doing in the market. So it's good stuff. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you both for being on today's show. Thank you for being partners of ours. And thank you to our audience for tuning in to another episode of The Granite List Live.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Granite List Live. Access our entire library by visiting your favorite podcast venue or subscribe on our site, thegranitelist.live.